I grabbed his forehead and his eyes with my fingernails, and it caused a lot of my fingernails to break and to bleed.
Tonight, a young woman says she was attacked by a cab driver. The cab company says it isn't so.
Be an important moment for all Canadians to reflect on both the historic legacy of harm that residential schools has created.
The Prime Minister holds his first photo op since leading his party to another minority government last week.
It felt good because we were all speaking in Migma.
And her fur trade era baskets are beautiful, sought after, and demand a good price. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. 1 year has come and gone since Joyce Echaquan hit record and live streamed her dying moments at Joliet Hospital to Facebook. But despite investments, apologies, and announcements made over the last 12 months, for the Echaquan family, little has changed. The anniversary began with a blessing of the hospital room where Joyce died, followed by a ceremony attended by family, community leaders, and Quebec ministers. There is still no set date for the release of the Quebec coroner's report examining the precise circumstances of Joyce's death. Meanwhile, Quebec still refuses to adopt Joyce's principle or recognize systemic racism. Two gestures Atikamekw leaders feel would make a difference.
C'est aussi ça, puis quand on parle avec les gens de nos communautés, les gens ils ont encore cette peur-là, ils ont l'impression de ne pas être écoutés. Puis quand tu entends parler des gens, des représentants du gouvernement qui ne veulent pas reconnaître le principe de Joyce, alors que c'est important pour la communauté, la famille, c'est comme si, encore une fois, le fait de ne pas être écouté, déjà, c'est un mauvais message qui est donné aux Premières Nations, donc le sentiment d'insécurité reste toujours.
Today, the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal announced they will suspend committee meetings with one of the city's youth protection agencies, saying that their allegations of systemic racism continue to fall on deaf ears. Tom Fenario starts off with when that relationship was far more promising.
For the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal, signing this collaboration agreement with a youth protection agency was cause for celebration.
This is a new kind of treaty where they're going to be looking to us to help with the children in care, and it's going to make a huge impact later on.
At a press conference on Tuesday, Naguset, still the director of the shelter, had this to say.
What happened was that it wasn't really implemented, nor was it followed.
The deterioration of the shelter's relationship with Batshaw Youth and Family Services is in free fall. The shelter has decided to suspend the committee they share with Batshaw and their parent organization.
What's difficult is that every time you bring an issue forward, it gets pushed back. And how many years does it have to get pushed back? Because on a daily basis, we're working with families that are coming in crisis, and they're like, this is not, I literally hear people running down the hallways of the Native Women's Shelter crying after getting off the phone with Batshaw.
In 2019, the shelter contributed to a report entitled One Step Forward, Two Steps Back. The report outlined several instances of systemic racism regarding Indigenous families and Batshaw, including Inuit children being told not to speak in Nuktitut during supervised visits, a lack of statistics for Indigenous children in care, and declining to create a consultation group with local Indigenous stakeholders.
Since then, they've offered to address our concerns under a diversity committee. However, we feel that being lumped in with other marginalized groups would not take into account our distinct history and legal status within so-called Canada.
The provincial health body that oversees Batshaw did not provide APTN with an interview. In an emailed statement, they said they will continue to work with other partners to provide adapted services that meet needs and that are offered in an environment where Indigenous people feel completely safe. Who exactly these partners are is not clear. Meanwhile, Naguset says the shelter will continue to work with frontline workers, but they're through reaching out to Batshaw's upper management. Instead, they'll be looking at legal actions, including filing human rights complaints.
What we need is for the institution to make some changes because it's like running into a wall.
Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Montreal.
To Winnipeg now, where police are investigating an incident between a woman and a cab driver over the weekend. The woman says she was assaulted by the driver and he tried to abduct her. But the driver reported to Winnipeg police that he was the one who was assaulted. Michelle Karlinzig has more on that story.
I grabbed his forehead and his eyes with my fingernails, and it caused a lot of my fingernails to break and to bleed.
Serenity Morisseau said during a September 25th cab ride in Winnipeg, the driver assaulted her. She and two friends took a Unicity taxi from a skate park at the Forks to her home. During a press conference held by Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs today, she said the driver punched her in the head 4 times and also tried to abduct her after her friends left the vehicle. She appeared bruised and had broken fingernails at the event today. Her mother, Tracy Bone, appeared alongside her and first reported the incident on Facebook. The AMC Grand Chief Arlen Dumas said he backs Morisseau in her accusations against the cab driver and Unicity.
And I'm going to completely support this family in what they're doing, because it's quite shocking that this is happening and continues to happen.
According to General Manager of Unicity, Satwinder Shahi, there was an assault, but it was against his driver.
The girl attacked the driver. He has bruises on his eyes, and his whole T-shirt was ripped off. At the same time, the driver just left that location and came back right away to the office.
Shahi says his driver became scared, alleging the 3 girls were drunk and aggressive towards him. He says the driver pushed back in self-defense, but did not punch the girl, only pushing back with his hand. According to Unicity, the camera was operating inside the cab, and police now have the footage. As for Shahi's explanation for the employee driving off with Morisseau inside the car,
just to avoid the situation, it's comfortable for him because 2 girls are already out of the taxi. Now there is only 3rd one who is in the car, which is aggressive and drunk. He preferred to drive and drop her off, like 500 meters from there.
the driver would not speak to us and has not been identified. Although Shahi says the driver was in distress, the emergency strobe light was not set off because the driver was too distracted to trigger it. The Winnipeg Police Service confirms they are investigating the incident and said in an email, both Morisseau and the cab driver called 911 and reported an assault. Michelle Karlinzig, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Well, we'd like to hear what you think about this or any other story. Here's how you can get in touch with us. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau held his first media availability since last week's election. Trudeau says he will announce his cabinet in October and reopen Parliament in the fall. Trudeau disclosed the news after visiting a vaccination clinic and greeting frontline workers. He also announced some priorities from his re-elected government, like affordable housing, growing the economy, and continuing to fight the pandemic. He also acknowledged the significance of Truth and Reconciliation Day this Thursday.
Be an important moment for all Canadians to reflect on both the historic legacy of harm that residential schools has created, but also the very current echoes in the present and in the future that those harms and those mistakes made by Canada in the past continue to deliver. So this Thursday will be an important day for reconciliation as we continue to make that a key priority for our government.
Meanwhile, Catholic bishops have pledged $30 million to support Indigenous reconciliation efforts across Canada. The Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops says the money will help fund reconciliation projects for residential school survivors, their families, as well as their communities across the country. Funding for projects will be decided in consultation with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit populations in each region. This follows an apology issued Friday by Catholic bishops for abuses suffered at residential schools. The churches ran those schools for the federal government for more than a century. Time for a quick break. Still to come, we'll speak with recently elected Migma Member of Parliament, Jaime Batiste.
And when I say nation, I want to be clear that I'm talking about the Mi'kmaq Nation, the 7 districts of Mi'kmaq Nations, not individual communities.
Welcome back. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will need to appoint a new Department of Fisheries and Oceans minister. That's because the former minister, Bernadette Jordan, failed to be re-elected. She was criticized for her mishandling of the Migma treaty fishery. That erupted in violence against Migma fishers a year ago. Well, Migma Liberal MP Jaime Batiste was re-elected, and talk out east is that he should be the new fisheries minister. Batiste joins us now. Jaime, thanks for being with us. With more First Nations asserting their treaty right to fish in the East Coast and the West Coast, do you think the fisheries minister should be Indigenous, and would it be a position you're interested in?
Well, I got into this to help solve problems. Whatever the Prime Minister asks of me, I would gladly, whatever role he deems most appropriate for me, I will gladly take that on. I'm not here to lobby on any positions or any for, especially to the media, about what I think I can bring to the table on this. But I do have quite a bit of experience with studying this issue for more than 20 years as a professor at a university, as someone who did their research paper in this in law school. I've been working with the chiefs for many years, and I've got some experience in terms of negotiating deals. But truthfully, whatever role I have, whether it's just to be the Member of Parliament for Sydney Victoria, I'm always happy to have that role.
Well, this says, very well that this is about asserting treaty rights. How can the Liberal government say they recognize treaty rights when the Department of Fisheries is hauling Migma traps and seizing boats, arresting even a 14-year-old?
Well, I think the first thing that we have to acknowledge is that these are issues that have been for more than 250 years since the signing of the treaties. Mm-hmm. We're looking at 20 years of litigation around the fisheries. We're looking at 2 Supreme Court of Canada cases. And for me to tell you that this is a simple thing would be to mislead you. If we want to do a deep dive into this situation, I think that it'll require much more than 5-minute interview, because I used to teach 4 classes at a university on Indigenous rights, Indigenous fishing, and what we've subsequently had happen since 1999 till today. But I also see that there's promise with us in terms of what we just did with the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, putting that into legislation. That's going to mean that, when we're looking at court cases moving forward, when we're looking at things moving forward from an Indigenous point of view, that now we have the Government of Canada recognizing that UNDRIP is the law in Canada. And within that, we'll breathe life into our treaties and inherent rights, because not only is UNDRIP about fair, just, and consensual relations between governments and Indigenous people, but it's also about how do you move forward with these rights. And we have a 2-year plan to ensure that we're not only recognizing this as legislation, but we're doing the necessary steps to revise and to adjust and to accommodate rights within every department. And I think that's part of where we need to be with fisheries, where we need to be with justice, where we need to be with health. We've got a lot of work to do into decolonizing a lot of structures that have been very much colonial structures for the past 150 years.
Do you think the commercial fishing industry should have a seat at the table when negotiating the treaty right to fish?
I think that they have a role to play. They should be heard, but the negotiation should be between nation to nation. And when I say nation, I want to be clear that I'm talking about the Migma Nation, the 7 districts of Migma Nations, not individual communities. I think that's where a lot of the challenge is that we're looking at a nation model with the Migma Nation that spans over 7 districts, but we're doing current negotiations between individual bands. And I think that's what's got us into a lot of trouble. That's why Senator Francis, Senator Christmas, and I said that we needed to take on an approach that expands nationhood and that takes control over the fisheries in a way such that the Migma have taken over control over education, and they've got one of the best education systems running. We got 90% graduation rates. It's all because more than 20 years ago they took over that control of that education. And I think that as part of this moving forward, that I would like to see the Migma take on a nationhood model where they work together. And fisheries associations have their organizations, and they've been given a chance to speak at the implementation studies that we've done on the moderate livelihood, which I personally introduced at the Fisheries Committee. And I think that they've got a voice. But when we're talking about nation-to-nation agreements, if we're going to stick with the constitutional law, we have to understand that these are between the Crown and the nations that signed those treaties.
Do you think that the Department of Fisheries and Oceans should stop hauling traps and seizing gear, making arrests, and let the Mi'kmaq fish to earn a moderate livelihood until the government and First Nations resolve the issue?
One of my key roles in this is to ensure that we keep the lines of communications open between the Mi'kmaq and the government. Now, I fully promote and fully advocate for, the assertion of Indigenous rights, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that there is, we have to also make sure that the fisheries is sustainable into the future. And that's one of the biggest things that I think we need to focus on, is how do we make sure that not only are we able to implement these rights and to be able to assert these rights, but doing so in a way that's transparent, that's doing so in a way that's consistent, and that it's the community has accountability to know who's fishing on their behalf and what they're fishing on their behalf as part of this. So I would like to see a spot where there's more active involvement between Indigenous community members and the DFO. And this was part of the recommendations that we made during the implementation study. There are excellent examples all across the Atlantic, especially in Listugush, of models where guardians are working with DFO. And I'd like to see an approach that has more Mi'kmaq working within DFO as part of the solution, as opposed to just having DFO hauling traps and things like that. I think that the Mi'kmaq have to have a greater role in not only enforcement, but also the science and research that's going into this. And this was part of the implementation study that we did on Mi'kmaq rights. And I would really encourage you to take a look at those recommendations.
Will do. Jaime, we'll have to leave it there, but appreciate you taking some time for us.
Okay, thank you.
Time to step aside for one more quick break. Still to come, we'll introduce you to a day school survivor making traditional baskets.
Okay, we want to do a trade. Here's a basket. How much would you give me for this basket?
Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. This one sent in from Janice Gladish. Here she snapped a photo of her family a couple of weeks ago enjoying the last days of summer as we officially entered autumn on September 22nd. Thanks for that, Janice. You can be sure to send us your photos to share at aptn.ca for the chance to be featured as our next photo of the day. Well, let's see if it's going to be summer-like out there tomorrow. Starting on the East Coast, 14 with showers in Halifax, 22 with rain in St. John's, 7 and cloudy for Kuujjuaq and Inukjuak, 15 with showers in Montreal, 11 and rain in Chibougamau, 20 and sunny for Sault Ste. Marie, 14 with showers in North Bay, 18 and partly cloudy for Thunder Bay, 23 in Sioux Lookout, 21 in God's Lake, 23 in Norway House, 28 in Winnipeg, 25 with showers for Brandon and Dauphin, 21 in Regina, 20 in North Battleford, 19 with showers in Meadow Lake, 15 with rain in La Ronge. In northern Alberta, 13 and sunny for High Level, 17 under the sun in Fort McMurray. 18 and sunny for Edmonton, 17 under the sun for Lethbridge. 14 and showers in Vancouver, 1 degree warmer with rain in Victoria. 12 with rain in Prince George, 7 and a chance of snow in Dease Lake. 0 in Old Crow, 4 in Whitehorse. 10 with rain in Yellowknife, 4 and sunny in Norman Wells. 2 with snow in Sax Harbor, 4 and snow for Paulatuck. 4 in Chesterfield and Whale Cove. -2 with snow in Resolute, 3 above, and flurries in Joe Haven. Now the story of a day school survivor who makes traditional Migma baskets and shares the traditions with others to keep her culture alive. Angel Moore brings us that story.
Of Elsie Buttook First Nation spends about 12 hours a day in her studio in southern Nova Scotia. She uses harvested black ash and sweetgrass to make baskets, strawberries, corn, and flowers, and fancy baskets designed to look like the ones traded with early Europeans.
So the ladies wanted to impress the Europeans and surprise them, like, okay, we want to do a trade. Here's a basket. How much would you give me for this basket?
Racine attended the Big Cove Federal School for 10 years, a day school located in her community where speaking Migma was not allowed.
That's why I speak out and protect the culture itself a lot. I feel like it belongs to us and we have to keep teaching our children.
Before COVID struck, Racine held workshops for youth and other survivors.
It felt good because we were all speaking in Migma. We all connected with everything, like the culture, the basket making.
Racine is known for her strawberry baskets, which sell for about $700. Items such as this corn basket are commissioned and can take longer to make and can sell for up to $1,500.
These are fancy baskets, and I love making fancy baskets. I like creating them. I dye them. I do flowers. I do all kinds of wacky stuff with ash.
Racine plans on moving back to New Brunswick to be close to her family and Elsie Buttook and pass on her knowledge to youth in her community. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabuktuk, also known as Halifax.
Some nice looking work there. Thanks, Angel. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Stick around. An encore presentation of Face to Face is up next. Have a great night.